Hi there. Recently I made a little set of coasters to give away for Christmas, and I used the design that was created in the free Christmas mini course that I have available on my website. Now that's been around for a couple of years now, so if you haven't already enrolled in it and done that exercise in the Bonina software, you might like to enroll in that course as it is free. So to do that, let me just bring up my website. So if you go to my website, machineembroideryanddigitizing.com, it's all one word, all lowercase. I'll put a link in the description below, and then you go to the online courses and you can scroll down and see all my online courses, and here's the free Christmas mini course. So I do have some other mini courses, so if you don't want to enroll in a very in-depth course for beginners that goes right through the software, then you might want to just do one of these mini courses. So there's this Shisha look, the in the hoop zipper pouch, freestanding net lace, and this Christmas one. There's a bobbin lace one, and soon there'll be the funky flower one. I've nearly completed that. But this is the course you want to enroll in, so you just click on it and it will take you through to the actual page where it tells you about the course, and you've got an enroll button here. Now it will ask you to go through a checkout process, but the price is $0, so of course you won't be charged anything. And once you enroll in the course and you've paid for it and all that's happened, then you can go to the My Account page and you can log in, and when you've logged in, you can go here to your courses. So my courses. And then you just click on the course you want to go to. So if you've got more than one course, they'll all show up here. So you click on the course that you want to do, and then you can get started, or you can click on any of the lessons if there's more than one lesson. So that will take you into the course. And here I have, as you can see, a little bit of information, and then there are videos here. And now each of these videos are downloadable, so you can download them and keep them to do when you're not on the internet. There are some terms and conditions for these courses, so just have a read of those when you get a moment. You can mark complete, but that's not essential, and you can just go through and complete that design. So if you've done that already, you'll have the design somewhere on your computer. So I'll just log out of there and close that, and close my little picture here and my browser. And so here is my design. Now I've shrunk it down a bit for the project, and I made it 100 by 1, I think 100 high. Let me just select the whole lot and group it. Group. Okay, so my height, yes, is 100 millimeters. I wouldn't go much smaller than that because your satin lettering then starts to get very tiny in the width here. So just watch that. But I stitched it out at the 100 millimeter height and it worked fine. So I wanted to make a coaster. That's why I made it 100 millimeters high, because I need a little bit of space around it. So the next thing I thought I would do was put some stippling in the background, because I wanted to put some wadding in here, and I thought a bit of stippling around here would be nice. So for that I used the quilting background tool, which I've all covered before. It's in the edit toolbox here. And if you come down, you'll find the quilting background, and I made it 120 width and height. So I left the colour at the default. My line spacing, I think I made that 7, but this is entirely your preferences. And then just go OK. And there I've got my stippling around the design. So that's quick and easy, and it actually defines the shape of the Christmas tree a little bit more too. Now the next thing I wanted to do was create a basting stitch to go before the stitch out. So, and I was envisaging this being an in the hoop project. So the basting stitch doesn't need to be a long stitch because it'll be cut away from the design. It'll be in the seam allowance, so I'm not worried about changing the stitch width or anything. So I'm just going to create a rectangle in the digitize toolbox, and I'm going to hold my control key down on the keyboard to constrain it to a square, and I'm just making it a little bit bigger. And of course I didn't set anything, so I'm going to get a fill stitch. Before you do that, it's a good idea to actually set that you want an outline for that, so I'll just do that now. It's quick and easy, and I'm going to give it a different color that's not in the design already so that it's separate. Now I want that to stitch first, so I'm going to move it to the top of the color film. So it's up here now, so it's just select it and click this move to start button on the color film. And I want to size it because I don't want it too big, because I'm going to try and fit as many as I can of these in a hoop. So I'm going to make that 130 square. So while it's selected, I can come up here to the width and height, and because it's a square I only need to change one of them to 130, and I'm going to enter that. Now you can see when I do shrink it down that I haven't got it centered. So what I need to do is group the stippling with the rest of the design. So if I click on the design at the moment in the color film, only the design selects. If I hold down my shift key, I can click on this one and it will all the stippling, and it will all be selected because this is next to the design. And if I right click, I can group those together. Okay, so now while they're selected, I can hold down my shift key. If it's not next to your other object, you'll need to hold your control key down if there's other objects in between. But if you hold your shift key down when they're next to each other, you can select this one and then go to the arrange toolbox and align centers. Okay, so that's got that beautifully aligned now. Now, how I stitched this out was I stitched the basting line, then I stitched the design and then the stippling, and then I created a line to sew the backing on. So I laid the backing down face down onto the project, so right side facing down onto the project, and I stitched an outline with a gap for turning so that I could once it was stitched I could turn it in the right way, and then it was just a matter of top stitching around the very edge to close off the gap and to just give it a nice neat edge. And that was my coaster finished. So I'm just going to take you over to the hooping that I did, because I used my maxi hoop, which is my largest hoop on my machine, and you can see here that I managed to fit 3 in there with gaps between, because you do need a bit of a gap for seam allowance. This is only like very small gap between the basting, so I actually cut through here. Now my outline is this pink line here, and you can see I've left a gap at the top. Now in hindsight, I should have left my gap at the side, because there's plenty of room here to leave a little bit more seam allowance when I'm cutting out at the gap, so that it's easier to turn in and keep it in when you press, and then stitch over the top with the top stitching. Here I didn't have an awful lot of fabric, so I cut fairly close to this line here when I cut them apart, and so I had enough to turn in, but I would have liked a little bit more. So in my next ones I'm going to make the gap over here. Now the quickest way to make a gap in the outline, rather than have to try and digitize around, if I go back to my design, I'm going to create another rectangle, and So another square, I should say. So I'll go to the digitize and create my rectangle, which is, I hold my control key down to get a square, and I want it a bit smaller, so I'll go in here. And again, I didn't set it, so we'll go select it and get an outline. One of these days I'll remember to set it. I'm going to make it hot pink, so it's a different colour. And it's going to stitch last, so it is last in the colour film by default now because it's the last thing I digitised. But I haven't aligned it with the centres, so I need to align that. It doesn't matter which one I align the centres with, but I could make something move if I just choose one of these. So what I'm going to do is group the design with the basting stitch I did before so that nothing moves, and then hold my shift key down and add this one, the new outline, and then go to my arrange align centers. Okay, there was a slight movement there, so now everything's centered really well. But I need that gap, so what do I do? While the rest of the design is selected, not the line that I want the gap in, I'm going to right click and lock that design just so that I don't cause any problems, because I'm going to cut this line now, this last pink outline, with a knife. So to do that, we go to Edit, Toolbox, and find the knife down the bottom. And you'll see that the line we had selected is now a bold pink line. And I'm just going to left click here, left click here, left click here, and left click here, and enter, just to chop that piece out. Now you can't really see it happening there, and there isn't any change in the colour film. That's because I'm in colour blocks mode. Colour blocks mode shows blocks of colour, not individual objects. So if I come up here to the show objects and come down to the bottom where those two objects are, you can see now I've got two objects selected in the pink. If I click off, it'll be a little bit more obvious. So here's the bit I cut out, and here's the piece with the gap. So I just select the bit I cut out and delete it. I don't need that. So now I've got my gap here. Now you can reshape that gap if you like. So you can select that object and reshape it. If you want to make the gap a little bit wider or a little bit more even, you can move these nodes. I'll just move that start out of the way. You can move that node, just follow the line back and make it a bit shorter, or you can keep it straight and make it a bit longer. It's entirely up to you. Leave yourself a reasonable gap, but it wasn't too bad to turn. So as I said before, I stitched the basting stitch first, then I stitched the design and the stippling, and then I laid the backing fabric face down on top of the design and stitched this construction liner, it is really, that holds the whole coaster together. And then it was a matter of cutting them out separately. So if I go to my other design, I cut outside this green line and trimmed off my corners. Just go to true view, it looks better. I'll take the trimmed off the corners and turned it, and then I top stitched around. As you can see, you can fit as many as you can in a hoop. Oh, and when you do put them into a hoop in multiple copies, you can colour sort them so that you don't have to keep changing your thread so many times. So if I go back to colour blocks, you can see here that I've stitched all the basting lines first, then all the red, then all the gold, then all the green, then all the stippling, and then last of all the closing construction line. So to colour sort, you need to select the whole design, and so I'll go Control A so it highlights up. There we go, and you can see here there's a sequence by colour. When you click on that, it will have the colours here, and if you've forgotten to put things in the right order over here, you can actually move some of these colours up and down to get the colour order okay here as well. I find it better to fix it in the colour film first though. So when you're happy with the colour order, you can go okay, I'm just going to cancel because I've already done it, and it'll be much quicker to stitch out.